Boston, the city of prestigious institutions, where the clang of Harvard's bells reverberates, and the venerable red brick buildings recount the historical saga of American democracy. Every street corner seems to bear an indelible mark of knowledge and progress. But there is a truth that few of us know, another Boston, hidden behind the elegant cobblestone lanes of Beacon Hill, lurking beyond the dazzling splendor of the seaport, a Boston that travel videos never dare to show you. Untold stories, unexplored corners, where darkness seems to lie in wait for anyone bold enough to look. Just a few minutes' walk from the financial district, you'll find makeshift tents where hundreds of people are fighting for survival, amid the wail of ambulance sirens and the cold glare of bus stop lights. They have no home, no voice, no right to be forgotten. They are ghosts on the city's map, people tourists never see, stories no tour operator wants to mention. We do not come to stage a tragic spectacle. We come to listen to the forgotten voices, the whispers from Mass and Cass, from the streets along the Charles, each story brimming with hope, loss, and struggle. This is not merely the story of a city, but the truths you will never hear in travel videos, the questions that even Bostonians sometimes cannot bear to face. And are the city's achievements truly enough to mask these deep wounds? Blind spot in the heart of the city, Boston, the city of knowledge and innovation, where prestigious institutions like Harvard and MIT stand firm amid civilization, where venerable red brick buildings appear in every travel photo, where streets glow with lights and historical landmarks are intertwined with the story of American democracy. Yet few know that beneath all that radiance, between the polished cobblestone lanes of Beacon Hill and the shimmering blue of the seaport, another Boston exists, a Boston people often deliberately choose not to see. No map marks it, no signpost announces it, but if you live in Boston, you know exactly where it is. The intersection of Massachusetts Avenue and Melnia Cass Boulevard, better known as Methadone Mile. It is a stretch of road with no remarkable scenery, just a winding, quiet strip. And the moment you step into it, you immediately feel the shift in atmosphere. Not a bustling or vibrant space, but one that is still, cold, and heavy with grayness. A name nobody wants to be associated with, yet everyone has heard because Methadone Mile is not an attractive tourist destination. It is the focal point of all the unhealed pain and wounds in modern society. Every day, Methadone Mile receives hundreds of people spilling in, those lost in their lives, those seeking a last glimmer of hope from methadone clinics. They do not come for healing so much as to keep fighting the consuming hunger of addiction, to find a fragile light amid the endless darkness of dependency and despair. Tents, shopping carts, the undersides of overpasses, all serve as makeshift shelters for people with no home, no hope for a better future. Here, Methadone Mile becomes a refuge for abandoned souls, those to whom society has turned its back. Each morning, as the faint light of dawn emerges, it is not birdsong that greets the day, but the roar of ambulances echoing from every corner of the avenue. Emergency vehicles line the street, and in that hush, you encounter bodies collapsed, people convulsing on sidewalks, wailing cries, and those slipping into comas from withdrawal. Outside the methadone clinics, the exhausted, worn down by relentless struggle, lie unconscious, while others clutch the pavement just to stay upright, waiting on a dose that might buy them another moment of life. And when night falls, the story grows even darker. Unlit corners of the street become gathering spots for illicit exchanges. Whispers of drug deals, wary glances from behind, discarded syringes on the pavement mark the ongoing, unresolved battle. Wherever there is no light, that is where drugs are traded, where desperate souls seek each other out in silence. Smoke, chemical odors, and the furtive sounds of covert transactions make the air suffocating. No space remains for life, only coldness and shadow. The overconcentration of short-term treatment services, paired with the absence of long-term solutions, has created a dark cycle from which the people here cannot escape. Addiction treatment centers, methadone clinics, and emergency shelters fail to address the root problem. They give addicts temporary relief, then leave them to continue facing homelessness and deprivation. With no long-term housing support and ineffective community reintegration programs, these individuals remain trapped in that endless loop, unable to break free. Everything feels like a nightmare with no end. The pain of Methadone Mile is not merely material deprivation, it is the absence of hope. Mental exhaustion and despair have stretched over years, and here people lack not only a roof, but also the opportunities to change. Addiction becomes a part of life, and no one can imagine what tomorrow will bring. The homeless, the addicted, live under constant threat from withdrawal waves, scarcity, and a society in which they seemingly have no place. Methadone Mile is a harsh reality of Boston, a city known for wealth and prestigious universities, yet harboring shadowed corners society chooses not to look at. It is a zone of failure, where efforts cannot alter the actual conditions of those left behind. These people do not need to be forgotten again. They need a chance to escape addiction, a place to call home, a fresh start. But when will society truly acknowledge them? When will Boston become not just a city of skyscrapers and renowned schools, but a place where all people, regardless of background, are given the opportunity to live and to change? Methadone Mile is not just a point on a map. It is part of the story of injustice in modern society. A story we all need to confront and ask, can development really be considered complete if blind spots like Methadone Mile still exist? A city buried in crisis. Boston, the city admired around the world, home to prestigious institutions like Harvard, MIT, and leading research centers that flourish here. A city proud of its depth of knowledge, celebrated for advances in science, technology, and culture. Yet beneath that gleaming veneer lies a troubling reality few wish to face. Beneath a facade of prosperity is a worrying truth, a city sinking into crisis that not everyone can see. The lack of basic infrastructure for the poor presents a serious moral dilemma, forcing us to rethink the city's development goals. In 2024, the Boston city government carried out a tent camp cleanup campaign and more than 270 tent camps were cleared. Sadly, most of the homeless were not rehoused. They did not disappear, they were simply pushed farther away, hidden in other corners of the city. They moved to areas outside the central zone, under the Tobin Bridge, along the Mystic River, or found secluded spots behind subway stations. Behind the gleaming skyscrapers and upscale cafes where tourists never venture are people struggling for survival, with no home, no place to go, and nowhere they can call home. While the city continues to grow with bright, modern projects, the Red Line and Orange Line of Boston's transit backbones tell a completely different story. Along the tracks, seats meant for passengers become beds for the homeless, worn out by cold and gnawing hunger through the night. Some fall asleep inside train cars. Others slump over on benches. Still others hide in public restrooms, places offering only temporary refuge, yet the only shelter from the bone-chilling winter winds. The Southampton Street Shelter, the city's largest emergency refuge designed for about 400 people, is routinely overwhelmed. On bitterly cold nights of minus 20 degrees Celsius, when the breath of the poor rises like mist in the freezing air, hundreds must sleep on the porch, wrapped in thin blankets and scavenge trash to fend off the biting cold. They long for warmth, even if fleeting, even for a second or a minute, just to endure the endless winter night. Every winter, when snow blankets the sidewalks, these scenes become all too familiar on city streets. In the bitter cold, the homeless burn scrap paper, plastic, trash bins, or whatever will catch fire to stay warm. Smoke from these small fires mingles with the acrid smell of burning nylon, rusty metal, and a toxic haze not unlike emissions from a chemical plant. The air around these tent clusters thickens, suffocating and foul. Only those who have lived it can understand that stifling feeling they face every day, not just from the cold, but from a society that turns its back on them. The cruel irony is that while these fires warm their hands for a moment, they bring added danger. They are the makeshift lifelines of people living in the worst conditions imaginable, yet the only hope they can cling to a small flame in the dead of winter, a faint light in overwhelming darkness, and lives sank in despair, waiting for a real spark. But the question is, can Boston, a city known for its prosperity and growth, continue to ignore those who are slowly dying in this frozen misery? The tent camps, the hidden corners, the fleeting figures in the night, all are the unseen parts of a city people refuse to see. Yet the more we turn away and forget, the deeper those wounds become, and the harder the crisis is to heal. Thus, Boston continues to advance. But does the city have the capacity to care for those left behind? The people left behind by the system. Amid one of the most prosperous cities in America, Boston, there exists a paradox that makes many ask, How can a society advance so far while forgetting its most vulnerable? Especially the homeless, those whom the social support system is supposed to help, yet face endless barriers when trying to get assistance. In this system, the more vulnerable you are, the harder it is to access services. For the homeless, to qualify for aid, they are required to provide documents that their circumstances have already taken away, valid ID, a permanent address, rental history, medical records, or proof of income. But it is precisely the loss of housing that prevents them from having those necessary documents. They have lost not only a roof over their heads, but also the ability to access the most basic services needed to reintegrate into society. For the homeless in Boston, deprivation is not just about lacking a home, but also about lacking opportunities to receive health care. Over 35% of Boston's homeless population have undiagnosed or inadequately treated mental health conditions. Disorders like depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia, illnesses that society routinely forgets when it comes to the poor, are not sufficiently supported. Even when they want to seek help, the system does not create an accessible path. Instead, it pushes them deeper into cyclical traps they themselves don't know how to escape. Like mental illness, nearly 40% of Boston's homeless live with at least one form of substance use disorder, primarily opioid, fentanyl, or alcohol addiction. Their addiction torments them relentlessly, yet despite the presence of treatment services, those services lack integration with long-term housing solutions, education, and restoration of dignity. The greatest deficiency is the disconnect between treating the illness and helping them re-enter society. Boston's addiction treatment programs are tiered, short-term, partial residential, long-term, but after completing short-term programs, many return to old patterns. They relapse and then slip back into the cycle of homelessness. No home, no assets, no hope. The most tragic part is that the system seems never to open a real chance for these people to rebuild themselves. Many have wandered for 5 to 10 years, with no medical records, no identification cards, no family, no bank. They have lost not only their homes, but have been expunged from the modern administrative system. They are excluded from society and cannot access any social services. These people have become, it seems, ghosts, unnamed in official registries, with no pathway back into a society that functions only for those who occupy positions within its system. With each passing year, these homeless individuals become more invisible. And while skyscrapers continue to rise and poverty support programs remain insufficient, they keep struggling with an unjust existence. No one sees them, and no one truly tries to help. The social care system that Boston prides itself on is in fact a system pushing them further into darkness, denying them the chance to rebuild their lives. And that is the painful paradox. The homeless are not weak. They are not incapable of taking care of themselves. They are people who once had families, jobs, ambitions, and dreams. Yet this very society, with its fragmented system and lack of sustainable support, has cornered them. The price paid is not only the loss of shelter, but the loss of everything that once made them human. The homeless in Boston are not merely materially deprived. They are people forgotten by this society, abandoned by this system. When they need help the most, the system erects insurmountable barriers. They don't need charity or pity, they need a chance to live a normal life, to reintegrate into society, to no longer be forgotten ghosts in the shadows of the city. But does Boston have the courage to confront this injustice? When we reevaluate our own system so that those left behind no longer have to live in invisibility and perpetual neglect? A seemingly simple question. What's for dinner today? At Mass and Cass, eating is no longer a daily ritual like it is for most people. It is an act of survival. Every meal is a struggle, the only chance to maintain health and vitality in a world that seems to have forgotten them. For the homeless here, the question, what's for dinner today, is not about food choices. It's a life or death matter, where having a proper meal may determine whether they survive the day. Each early morning, when charities like Pine Street Inn or Boston Rescue Mission bring out food for those in need, the people lining up aren't choosing between delicious dishes or favorite meals. Their food consists of watery porridge, damp white bread, and cold coffee, not by choice, but because that's all that's available. These modest, often meager meals are lifelines for those lost in poverty, without shelter or refuge. At lunch and dinner, the scenes grow even more haunting. People form long lines in front of churches, mobile food trucks, or wait at free meal distribution points, sometimes even scrambling for leftovers from weddings or meetings. Their meals are not shared family dinners or warm evening gatherings, but desperate efforts to stay alive and stave off hunger. The food isn't chosen, it's often whatever remains, with uncertain origins and questionable safety. Common meals include the kind no one else wants, but for them, it's all they can get. Reheated frozen soup. No one really knows the ingredients or how old it is. Sandwiches made from stale bread and canned meat that may have been left out for days. Rice mixed with beans and spicy sauces of unknown expiration dates, often causing stomach issues that linger for days or weeks. These meals are not only lacking in nutrients, but also full of health risks, making already fragile individuals even more vulnerable. Perhaps most heartbreaking is the severe lack of basic amenities. Without kitchens or access to clean water, both essential for food hygiene and health, these people still have to find ways to survive. Some plug electric pots into streetlight sockets, burn plastic bags, old boxes, and used clothes to boil water just to reheat leftovers or have something warm to drink. These acts not only endanger their health, but also carry the risks of fire, pollution, and serious illness from toxic materials. Every attempt to cook is a health hazard just to get a little warmth or a sip of hot water to carry them through another day. According to the Boston Public Health Commission's 2025 report, the rate of gastrointestinal infections, parasitic diseases, and intestinal inflammation among the homeless is 3.2 times higher than the city's average. The reality becomes even more disturbing when we see homeless people suffering from illness due to a lack of sanitation, no clean drinking water, and insufficient food. The absence of clean water for cooking and drinking leads to intestinal infections, diarrhea, and inflammation, worsening their already fragile condition. The lack of basic resources doesn't just cause physical pain, it erodes the immune system, leaving them susceptible to more infectious diseases. Around 62% of Boston's homeless population does not consume enough calories to maintain health. This is an alarming figure. Living in conditions of chronic shortage, they face malnutrition, electrolyte imbalance, and dangerously low blood sugar. When the body lacks energy, it leads not just to fatigue and weakness, but also to a decreased ability to fight off illness. Their health steadily declines, and once they're caught in this downward spiral, recovery becomes almost impossible. Beyond the physical toll, poor nutrition drains them of the mental strength to face life, and over time, despair and hopelessness consume their minds. For the homeless at Mass and Cass, meals are not simple routines like they are for us. A quick breakfast, a family dinner, they are daily battles for survival. Food is no longer something to be enjoyed, but merely something to stay alive. With every meal, they don't know what they'll receive, but it's always something unworthy, unsafe, and nutritionally inadequate. They have no choice, no freedom to choose meals like we do. For them, the question, "What's for dinner today?" becomes a cruel reflection of a society where the most vulnerable live in poverty, scarcity, and abandonment. And while the city glows with upscale restaurants where people savor lavish feasts, thousands at Mass and Cass can only dream of a full meal. This isn't a story about the unlucky. It's a story about injustice, a story of a city where so-called development doesn't always include every part of the community. These inadequate meals reflect not only material deprivation, but also a loss of dignity and human respect. More importantly, they serve as a stark reminder that in a society where wealth is celebrated and elevated, the poor are left behind in the shadows of makeshift meals, waiting for salvation that may never come. When a city rises, who gets left behind? Over the past 5 years, Boston has undergone a wave of large-scale urban investment projects that have dramatically transformed the city's appearance. The Seaport District, with over $6 billion invested in tech and office towers, has become a symbol of booming growth in technology, finance, and real estate. Alongside it, the Innovation Corridor stretches along the Charles River, where rental prices have surged by 70% since 2018. These areas have attracted thousands of startups, investors, and major corporations, turning Boston into a vibrant, cutting-edge tech hub. However, while the city welcomes prosperity, this growth has been far from equitable. Affluent areas like the Seaport and the Innovation Corridor are flooded with billions in investment, yet lack policies to support the poor. especially the homeless. The budget allocated to homelessness programs accounts for just 1.9% of the city's total budget, an alarmingly small figure compared to Boston's economic boom. This results in a severe shortage of housing solutions and support systems for those living on society's margins. The biggest issue is the absence of any development profit redistribution mechanism, meaning there's no requirement for developers to reserve a portion of land for affordable housing projects. Booming districts have no built-in structure to ensure that low-income residents or the homeless benefit from the city's rise. Instead, they are pushed out of high-value areas, where they can no longer live, access essential services, or integrate into the community. When major events like the Boston Marathon, street festivals, or art exhibitions take place, the police frequently clean up the streets by dismantling encampments, confiscating homeless individuals' belongings, or forcibly relocating them to shelters. While such actions may present a cleaner, more appealing image to tourists and investors, they fail to address the root causes. The homeless don't disappear, they're simply displaced to more remote, inaccessible corners of the city. They're erased from the city's bright spots, not because they no longer exist, but because they no longer fit the prosperous image Boston is working so hard to portray. Each time a camp is cleared, the homeless return to other overlooked corners of the city, places no one pays attention to. They don't vanish, they're just pushed further from areas of value, no longer welcome in the carefully curated picture of success the city wants to paint. But this is no lasting solution. These people still exist, still live in poverty and scarcity, only now they're invisible to the public and tourists alike. Boston's development is surging, but that doesn't mean everyone benefits from the change. The homeless and the poor are not only excluded from the economic boom, they're forgotten in the city's policy decisions. The lack of mechanisms to redistribute real estate profits into affordable housing initiatives has led to an ever-widening wealth gap. The skyscrapers in Seaport and Innovation Corridor stand as icons of prosperity, while elsewhere, people struggle in poverty-stricken neighborhoods with no access to the city's shared progress. As this city continues to grow, lawmakers and leaders must realize that progress cannot be measured by the number of towers or tech parks alone. A truly thriving city must recognize and include all segments of its population. If Boston's development doesn't come with sustainable social solutions, especially for the vulnerable, then the city cannot claim true success. Prosperity isn't just tall buildings. It's the assurance of a dignified life for every resident, no matter where they are, where they come from, or what their circumstances may be. Boston's rise, marked by glittering towers and bustling districts, is meaningless without attention to those living on the fringes. They aren't part of the so-called rising city. They are the ones struggling, pushed out of view while the city moves forward. There must be policies and development plans that include everyone, especially the poor and homeless, if we are ever to build a truly fair and sustainable city. The real price of progress. Boston, an academic powerhouse, home to prestigious institutions like Harvard, MIT, and world-renowned research centers, has long stood as a beacon of intellectual and scientific advancement. The city prides itself on remarkable achievements in technology, finance, and elite education. Yet, behind these impressive accomplishments lies a deeper, more unsettling truth. Boston's development is exacting a hidden cost that not everyone sees. Despite being one of the most affluent cities in the United States with a strong economy, Boston ranks among the top 5 cities with the highest income inequality in the country. This disparity is not accidental. It is the result of uneven development and a lack of equitable benefit distribution. Rapidly expanding areas like the Seaport District and the Innovation Corridor have attracted billions in investments, yet there are no adequate systems to ensure that the city's poor or homeless share in this prosperity. Instead, the wealth gap has grown ever more stark, leaving the most vulnerable facing even greater hardship in their daily struggle to survive. According to city projections, by 2025 the number of homeless individuals in Boston will exceed 8,100. That is a staggering figure, but what's more alarming is that these people are living entirely on the margins of society, in material deprivation, without a place to call home. Among them, 1,200 are children or teenagers, individuals who should be nurtured, educated, and given the chance to grow, but who are instead trapped in poverty and homelessness in one of the richest cities in America. Nearly 30% of Boston's homeless population are military veterans, men and women who once served their country, but upon returning home, found themselves battling hardship without shelter, healthcare, or support. It's a heartbreaking paradox. Those who gave part of their youth and strength to serve the nation are now some of the very people society has abandoned. Roughly 40% of homeless individuals suffer from chronic illnesses that go untreated. This is deeply alarming. These people not only endure poverty, but also live with serious health conditions while having no access to basic medical care. Chronic illnesses such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, or mental health disorders make their lives even more difficult, and the lack of adequate medical attention forces them to suffer in silence as their health deteriorates. A report by the Boston Public Health Commission reveals that the average life expectancy for homeless individuals is just 47 years, nearly 30 years lower than the citywide average. This figure speaks volumes. It reflects not only the lack of nutrition and healthcare, but also the painful truth that society has turned its back on the most vulnerable. A life expectancy this low is the consequence of instability, scarcity, and systemic exclusion in a city where the wealthy continue to thrive and enjoy their success. What's particularly painful is that many of these people once lived ordinary lives. They had jobs, families, and made contributions to the economy. Now, they are forgotten. They've not only lost their homes, but also their trust in the very system they were once part of. These individuals are not beggars. They are not irresponsible or lazy. They are people who once helped build Boston, and yet now they've become the excess population in a system that no longer has space for them. Worse still, many are not just poor, but treated as disposable. They lack not only shelter, but also dignity and respect. When a person becomes homeless, they are not only shut out of housing policies, they are denied the basic opportunity to live a normal life. They are viewed with suspicion, avoided, pushed aside, while society continues to move forward without them. The true cost of Boston's development isn't just measured in dollars or buildings. It's written in the lives of those who have been cast into the shadows. Until the city chooses to include everyone in its definition of progress, it cannot claim to be truly thriving. Boston's development cannot be measured solely by economic indicators or the presence of high-rise office towers. Behind this prosperity lies a population living in poverty, without housing, without the necessary support. As the city grows, the homeless are unable to access that progress. They are pushed out, turned into ghosts, erased from society, and excluded from the system. The true cost of development isn't found in financial growth figures or gleaming real estate projects. The real cost is the people left behind, those who once had families, jobs, and lives, but now struggle with deprivation, illness, and abandonment. When prosperity serves only a privileged few, while the poor are left to survive on society's fringes, that development cannot be called true progress. The real price of progress is paid by those with no shelter, no hope for a better future, and no opportunity to return to society. Boston is more than just Harvard's libraries or the Paul Revere statue. It also has shadows, places where the American dream fades before it ever begins. Picturesque streets, towering skyscrapers, and elegant cafes cannot hide the harsh truth that, at the heart of this city, thousands of people are still fighting to survive. They have no homes, no refuge, and no opportunity to dream of a brighter future. The American dream, the idea that anyone can rise and move forward, seems to be reserved for only a small portion of the population, while the vulnerable are left behind, forgotten in the city's darkest corners. Boston's homelessness crisis is not the problem of a few individuals. It is the consequence of selective urban policies, an unchecked housing market, and a society accustomed to turning its back on those on the margins. As the city grows taller, brighter, and cleaner, the poor are pushed further out. They live under tarps, eat cold meals, sleep on sidewalks, and dream of the day they might have a place to call home. But those dreams are fragile, easily washed away by waves of injustice and scarcity. The final question is not just one for city officials or investors, it is for all of us, the people who live here. If a modern city allows its residents to freeze to death on the streets because they have no shelter, should we call that progress or failure? We may continue to praise material achievements, but do we have the courage to admit that a truly complete city is one where all people, rich or poor, are treated with fairness and given a chance to rise?